Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm going to get started in a minute. I just need to let everybody know that the stream is going on right now. Okay, before I get started, I always like to do the promotions before I get started, but I'm gonna take a minute and before I get started, take a minute to tell you guys about a Kickstarter that's going on. We got about 9 days left on Concrete Comics Acolyte #3. So I want everybody to head over to Kickstarter and drop a pledge on this brother's book, because this book is the best comic of 2020, and you definitely will not be disappointed. So the brother has his comic out here. It's absolutely fantastic. If you love old school 1970s comics by George Perez and Don Byrne, you definitely want to put a pledge in for this comic. So I'm going to leave a link to that in the chat. And I'm also asking everybody to pick up the books of the SJS Direct 2021 catalog, Isis Revenge of the Cyber Goddess and John Haynes Taking Care of Business. Both of these books can be found in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com right now. I'm looking for some sales, so I'm asking everybody to step out and pick up these books on Amazon. So with that said, I'm going to start tonight's show. And what's going on, Ray? What's going on, Gordon? What's going on, D-Wood? And tonight's topic is a follow-up to a video I did this Monday, I believe. And that video was talking about why American men just don't approach American women anymore. And most American men now are not approaching American women because the rules of engagement have changed so much that most men just do not know if they can go out here and approach women. Because over the last, I say, 2 or 3 years, the rules of engagement have made the environment so hostile that most men just aren't really interested in even trying to approach, because there's just too much for most American men to lose. Now, it wasn't always like this in the world of dating. In fact, in the world of dating, it was oftentimes a lot easier than it was today. I mean, 40 years ago, women oftentimes went out here looking for guys to date at a job. I mean, women, when they used to go to work, they were going to look for a husband at a job at one time. But those days have really changed, and most of your American women these days because of what happened with Anita Hill, they no longer look for a husband at the job market. And that was the start of a lot of the real problems as related to the dating world, because the dating world, it wasn't that bad until I say about 1992. And that's when we had your Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill case, where she made allegations against your Clarence Thomas of sexual harassment. And with those allegations came the first change in the rules of engagement for dating in the workplace. Because before your Anita Hill made those allegations, a lot of women, they were actually going to work to go look for that husband at the workplace, because they knew if the guy had a good job at the workplace, he would be able to go out here and provide for them. And he would be able to go out here and work towards building something, because he was building something for himself. So that's why a lot of women, when they would go into the workplace, they would go looking for a guy who was either, if he was working in a factory, on the line, or he is somebody who was on his way to management. So they would go out here looking for that kind of guy before the 1992 came along and made it where it was all about this whole sexual harassment thing. Now, there were sexual harassment laws on the books before 1992. They were part of, I think, Title VII in the 1960s. But a lot of women still went to the workplace looking for a man, because they knew that that man was economically secure. They knew that that man had a good job. They knew that that man was on his way. They knew that that man could be able to pay bills and go out here and provide a home. So that's why they would go out here and go to work in a lot of cases, is they wanted to go get that guy. But unfortunately, once that Clarence Thomas case came along and blew up on mainstream media, what happened was that set one of the first boundaries that changed the rules of engagement. And with that changing the boundary for the rules of engagement, what happened was many men who used to go out here and approach females on the job stopped approaching females on the job, because they had too much to lose. Because at that time, if a woman made a claim of sexual harassment against you after 1992, it was the high possibility of three things happening to you. One, you could get written up and sent to human resources for discipline. Two, you could be suspended from your job if it worked like that. Or three, you could get terminated from your job. And most men out here, they did not want to lose their reputation at the job or be seen as a sexual harasser. So what a lot of men did was they started stepping back in after 1992, because they just did not want to wind up risking their whole job. They didn't want to risk at the minimum getting written up and having a letter in your file, or two, losing 2 weeks pay, or three, just losing your job altogether. So a lot of men wound up saying to themselves, this just isn't worth the risk trying to approach females on the job. So they shifted from approaching females on the job to going out here and looking to approach women at places like your bars and your clubs, and even in some cases, places like your supermarkets and other places like the park. So you had guys out here, they were looking to go out here and approach women, but over the last, I say, 20, 25 years since the Anita Hill case, we've seen the lines get further and further away as related to the rules of engagement, and this has pushed further and further distance between men and women. So instead of us seeing men and women looking to go out here and engage each other, what we're seeing is men putting distance between themselves and women, because a lot of the policies and the rules have changed, and a lot of guys, they look at the lines and they say, look, if I approach this woman, there are chances that I have just so much to lose. And a lot of guys, they just don't want to go out here and wind up losing everything, all because they wanted to just go out here and get a phone number. Now, from 1992 all the way, I say, until about 2014 or 2015, when the Cosby allegations came along, that's where we had guys where they were keeping their distance at work. But then they started to see problems because we started to see this case being presented against Bill Cosby. Now, this case against Bill Cosby had a major impact on guys approaching women, because what happened with this case was it changed the rules of engagement once more. Because with the rise of these allegations against Bill Cosby as related to the alleged sexual assault, we saw the rise of the Me Too movement. And this Me Too movement was out here looking to allegedly stop sexual harassment and sexual assault. And according to them, they were going to stop all of the sexual harassment and sexual assault, and by going out here and changing things. But what they did when they changed things was they made it where many men just felt like there was no way they could go out here and approach women anymore, because under the rules that Me Too changed in the workplace as related to sexual harassment, we went from the official government standard, which said unwarranted and unwanted advances towards a woman or a hostile environment or the standard for sexual harassment, to a just vague, ambiguous standard where a man could wind up punished based solely on the allegations of a female. So instead of us having a clear set of rules for sexual harassment that we had established from the Title VII in 1963, I believe, to the where it stated that sexual harassment was when a man was making an unwanted and unwarranted advance, and that meant if the man went out here and after he asked a woman out, he asked once again or twice again. That was the original standard of sexual harassment. Or if he went out here and he posted a lot of nude photos and said a lot of things that were sexual, that would be considered a hostile environment. That was the standard for many years, but many companies pulled away from that official federal standard of sexual harassment. And now we have this very ambiguous standard that has been set privately by private companies. And that's one of the things that led to men really pulling back in the workplace and putting more professional distance between themselves and women. And then we have the whole narrative of street harassment, which was presented in I believe a couple of films by some white females. And that also led to a lot of men looking to, again, put distance between themselves, because these women wanted to go out here and say, oh, men are harassing me on the street. And that also made a lot of men look to avoid approaching women. And that came before the Me Too movement came to rise, but it was the Me Too movement and their campaign against Bill Cosby that really, really shifted the line as related to the rules of engagement as related to men approaching women. Because according to the Me Too movement, any sort of approach that a man made was possibly seen as sexual harassment and so-called harassment. And this is why many men just started to get really nervous about approaching women. And the thing that really started to make men really start getting scared was when they started to see the Me Too movement destroying men's careers and just going out here and making it where they were forced to resign their jobs. Because as they were going on in their campaign against Bill Cosby, we had Roger Ailes get caught up in a scandal. And then once he got caught up in that scandal and paid Gretchen Carlson that $20 million, white females' hypergamy kicked in. And then they looked to make allegations against every white man out here And those allegations really, again, made it where a lot of men started really rethinking how they approached women, because all it took was an allegation from one of these women to lead to a man winding up being forced to resign at his job. And in some cases, he had to worry about the possibility of being criminally prosecuted for any sort of alleged crime that she said that he committed. And that's, again, a real reason for a lot of men to not want to go out here and approach women, because many of those men, they were looking at the big picture as relating to things, because they were saying that, yes, I may find this woman to be quite attractive, but I don't want to lose my intangibles of manhood. And most men did not want to lose, because a man is the only person who can go out here and provide for himself. He is the only person who can go out here and take care of his own business. And if he cannot go out here and be able to make a living, then he just cannot survive in the world. And this is the thing that led to men really, again, back in 92, rethinking approaching women at the job. And then later on, I think about 2015, 2016, after street harassment and Me Too, rethinking their approach to women once again, because a man is the only person who can go out here and feed himself, take care of himself, and be able to pay bills like his rent and for his electric and light and gas. And he needs his job in order to do that. And he needs a professional reputation that is clean in order to make that kind of living. And because most men don't want to risk their ability to make a living, they are willing to walk away from most of your American females, because in the eyes of most men, the environment is just too hostile at this point for them to go out here and approach and engage most of America's females, who now have such leverage that has been given to them as related to being able to take a man's freedom just with their word. And that was one of the most terrifying things over the last 2 years, as the Bill Cosby conviction changed the standard of the law of the land. Because that's the thing that many women really didn't think critically about, was that in their zeal to go and support the Me Too movement, that this conviction that they went out here to get against Bill Cosby had a major impact on the dating scene. Because when it came down to that conviction against Bill Cosby, it changed the standard of law in these United States from the standard of due process under the law to the standard of trust and believe. And under the standard of trust and believe, anything a woman said regarding a man doing something to her was taken as truth, and those truths could be used to go out here and have the police go out here and have a man arrested solely on her word. Now, a lot of females don't understand how the power of that whole standard of trust and believe, and how it has an impact on all men. Because many of the women of the Me Too movement, they thought, oh, this standard of trust and believe was just going to be used on black men, but they didn't understand that this standard is, when it was established as legal precedent, was the law of the land. And as the law of the land, it made it where all it took was, again, that one allegation from a woman, and a man could wind up getting arrested just based on that woman's word. So a lot of men, when they saw what happened to Bill Cosby, whether they be black or white, because I've seen the guys in the white social circles, they talked about this Bill Cosby conviction and the impact that it had on everybody. And this verdict really, again, it changed the way men went out here and engaged women. So many of the women who were out here, the feminists who were a part of the Me Too movement, and many of these other women out here on the fringe, they didn't really understand the concept, like Gabrielle was talking about, the cause and the effect. Now, they supported the feminist cause to go after what they called predatory men, but the heavy-handedness led to an effect that led to men walking away from socializing with women, because most men just said to themselves that they just didn't want to deal with the whole possibility of having things go wrong and them winding up with a police officer knocking on their door saying that they committed a crime that they did not commit, all because they wanted to just see a very attractive woman, and then that they go and try to talk to that attractive woman, and what happens is, because she doesn't want to be approached by this man, she winds up calling the police on him. So a lot of men out here, they saw that with this verdict and the legal ramifications of it, they could wind up losing their freedom, and they wound up sitting there saying to themselves, look, I don't want to go to jail just because I want to get a phone number from a woman. So what they did was they pulled back, because they said to themselves, this intangible of freedom has a higher value than approaching this woman. So most men out here were looking at that intangible of their freedom and saying that, look, if I'm free, I can go out here and I can make a living. If I'm free, I can go out here and be able to go out here and live my life. If I'm free, I can go out here and be able to do what I need to do. So in order for me to go out here and have my freedom, that means I can't really deal with these females. And while God did make the woman for the man can't get with the woman because of the policies created by the state to allegedly protect the female. But the great irony is, in their efforts to protect the female with policies she demanded, what has happened is the female is now not really getting approached by the men out here, because those men are looking at those women and understanding that they don't want to catch a case all because a female says that he did something when he did nothing. So a lot of American men, they're sitting there, they want to approach women, they want to go out here and pursue relationships with women. Unfortunately, a handful of females have created a policy that has prevented American men from being able to approach women. And many of these women who went out here and created these policies, like your Rose McGowans, your Tanara Burks, your Gloria Allreds, and many of your feminists out here, they wanted to go out here and they wanted to create these policies to so-called stop these sexual harassers. But they were out here saying, oh, this is sexual harassment. But when we looked at a lot of the cases they were making in their Me Too allegations, what happened was these women were really complicit as related to many of these alleged cases. They were sitting there saying, oh, this man went out here and did something wrong. But once people did the research, they found out that many of these females who were making these allegations were actually the side piece of some of these guys, or they were out here on the casting couch trading sexual favors in exchange for parts or exchange for labor. So you had a lot of females out here who were doing a lot of dirt, and they were using the Me Too movement as a way to try to revise history so that they would not be seen as the being complicit in their affairs. They wanted to go out here and make themselves out to be victims, but they weren't victims. Unfortunately, their whole campaign has victimized an entire generation of women. And what's happened to the younger generation of women out here is they're the ones who are really suffering. And this younger generation of women, they are really suffering because this older generation of women, these older generation of women who were out here being the side piece, they were out here trading sexual favors in exchange for parts and labor. They were out here sleeping with multiple men, and these women did this for their youthful years, and then they got older, they hit the wall, they got into their 30s and 40s, and what happened was, after years of being the side piece, years of sleeping around and trading parts trading their bodies for parts and labor, what happened was they never got to secure a husband, because when you're a side piece or you are out here trading your body in exchange for parts and labor, what happens is you're having a business agreement with those guys, but you don't have that title of wife. So basically, you are out here being a woman who just is out here waiting to be in that first place, but you're always in a perpetual state of being in second place. So we have a lot of these females who were out here back in the 80s, back in the 90s, back in the early 2000s, and a lot of these females, they were out here, they put themselves in second place, and they wasted their youthful years, their young time, their 20s, their early 30s, and they didn't secure a husband. And because they didn't secure a husband, many of these women, they started to realize that a new crop of younger women were coming along. And with this new crop of younger women coming along, what was happening was they weren't able to compete. So when it comes down to females, they compete against other females. And a lot of these females was realizing that their time was up, because a lot of those females who were in their late teens, early 20s during the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, they were realizing that a new group of women were coming along in their 20s and their late teens, and these women were starting to replace them as the new hot faces. I mean, that's just a natural part of life, but it's not a part of life that many of your feminists really understand, because what your feminist thinks is that they have all the time in the world. And it's like Rob I.S., good to see you here, said, it's hitting the wall. But most feminists think that they have all the time in the world because they think a woman and a man are the same. And that's one of the things that messes a lot of these feminists up, is that they think a man and a woman are the same due to their dysfunctional upbringing they get inside of a single mother household. They don't really understand that when you have a woman, she is only got a limited time in the world, but they spend their time out here in the world calling themselves trying to compete against men. But then they realize that their female competition is out here, and then they realize that they can't compete with that female competition because they've hit the wall, they've lost their looks, and they cannot really go out here and get the attention of the guys anymore. Because once that woman hits maybe 40, 45, or even 35 in some cases, they just wind up making it where the guys just aren't checking for them. Because when a woman is young, when she's like 18, 19, 20, she's got a large pool of guys out here looking to chase her, especially if she's incredibly attractive. But what happens is, as that woman gets older, what happens is that pool starts to shrink. Now, that pool starts to shrink usually after a woman turns 25, 26, because a lot of the guys out here will find other women and they'll marry those other women, or some guys will wind up dead, but people will usually wind up picking their partners in their mid-20s at the most and their early 30s at the least. But the feminist, because she thinks that she's just like a man, she thinks she has the time in the world, and she thinks that she can just go on as she gets older and then find other guys later on. Unfortunately, that what has happened is that they can't find anybody because the pool has practically dried up. Once you hit 30, 35, 40, the pool dries up of guys who are actually interested. And maybe there might be one or two scragglers on the end from your generation. But in the case of men, they can go out here and find the younger women. And that is what's had a lot of the Me Too women extremely angry, was many of those men who were older were out here looking for younger women. And the women of the Me Too movement, they wanted to stop men from being able to go out here and approach those younger women. So that was one of the reasons why the Me Too movement really wanted to change the rules of engagement, because one, they did not want the younger women to compete out here in the dating marketplace, and two, they did not want those older, more established men from getting access to those women. So what they wanted to do was cut those men off from being able to get access to those women, because those men were actually in a place where they had more leverage. Because if you're an educated professional man and you are established, then you can go out here and be able to be more attractive to women, because that man is seen as somebody who, again, is capable of providing for a woman. But those feminists, they know that they cannot compete with these younger women, so they wanted to go out here and cut those women off at the knees so that they could not compete. And these rules are designed to prevent guys from approaching women. They're designed to make it where a man can't really engage with a woman. And it's them trying to control the marketplace through these, what some people have called communist style tactics, where they're going to try to make you take these older women, but these older women, they just are not, men are just not interested in them, and they're not interested in approaching them. And no matter how many rules you try to put in place, eventually the whole thing is possibly, as I see it, going to change back, because men aren't approaching women right now due to these feminist policies and these unwritten social rules and even some of these laws that have been put in place. Because after the Cosby conviction, yes, the Cosby conviction was overturned, and what has happened is that you still have a lot of other laws on the books as related to sexual harassment and laws related to sexual assault that make it where men can't engage. And that's one of the things that's making it where men just aren't approaching women, because these women who are a part of the Me Too movement and these feminists have put these laws on the books. And because of these laws being on the books and these policies being in place, many men are just keeping their distance from these women out here, and they just don't want to wind up in a place where a female who has a bad night or has a bad date decides to call 911 and then winds up getting him arrested, all because he didn't allow her to order lobster at the Sizzler, or allow him, or go out here and he left the toilet seat up when he used her bathroom. I mean, this is the type of stuff that has a lot of men scared to go out here and approach, not to mention people's, possibly in some states and some local ordinances, talking about the whole street harassment concept. Because the whole street harassment concept is, if a guy approaches you it's in some cases, in the cases of these super feminists, that's considered an assault. But that's always been part of the whole dating approach. I mean, even in the days of courtship, when a man went out here to get involved with a woman, he had to go out here and he had to go talk to her. And after he talked to her, he had to wait for the father to invite him to dinner. And then at the dinner, he had to show that he was a valuable asset to the family. And he had to show that he would go out here and do right by the man's daughter. That was all part of the courtship process. But because your feminist was a low-level woman who could not really engage because she did not have a father in her life, what happened was she could not get access to men. And what your feminist wants to do, because she can't get access to men, is make it where other women can't get access to men. And because she doesn't want that man to get access to women, what she wants to do is block these women from being able to get access to the men with resources, because she can't get access to those men with resources, whether it be the old feminist or the young feminist. She just cannot compete in the dating world, and she wants to keep men from being able to approach those women who can go out here and compete. So that's why they're out here putting all of these types of legislation and unwritten social rules out here on things. They're trying to go out here and prevent those women who can compete in the dating world from competing. Because, like I'm just putting in my new book, The Woman Crisis, the woman from the two-parent home, she has the greatest advantage for getting married. She has the greatest advantage of finding a quality man, and she has the greatest advantage as related to having a relationship. So the woman from the two-parent household, the girl from the two-parent household who has seen a father in her life and has a father in the home, she will get approached by men out here because those men see somebody who can be a partner to them in a relationship. Whereas the feminist, she is not somebody anybody wants to approach. And what she wants to do is cock block all of the women out here and make it where the men can't approach the women. And the men, again, they want to approach. They really do want to approach, but they just don't know where the line is as related to your American female. Because the big problem with your American female these days is that she doesn't speak for herself. And that's one of the big problems that has led to men not being able to approach women, is the silence of the American woman. Most of your American women, they have been extremely silent as related to their problems, and they don't come out and speak against this feminist and let her know that you're messing up the game for me. That's the thing that really frustrates a lot of guys, because guys know that the woman wants to be approached. They know that she's interested, but they're waiting for the other women out here to hard check the feminist and let her know that you're messing up the game for me, you're messing up stuff for me, and that you don't speak for me. It's like your modern American woman, she has to, again, start opening up her mouth, because if she doesn't say what she wants, what happens is the feminist speaks for her, and when the feminist speaks for her, that is taken as the daily word. And what exacerbates the situation is that this feminist is the one out here creating laws on the behalf of all American women, and this feminist is out here creating guidelines at the job that is keeping these standards in place that keep men from approaching you. So it's the feminist who is going out here establishing these rules out here, and men have to follow those rules because they don't want to wind up losing their job. They don't want to wind up losing their freedom, and they don't want to wind up getting arrested and prosecuted, all because they saw a very attractive woman and they wanted to go and see what she was about and try to get her phone number. I mean, they don't want to wind up catching that case from the DA as related to, hey, I just saw this girl and I wanted to talk to her either at the job or I saw her at the restaurant. I mean, it's gotten so bad that no man can go anywhere and talk to a woman, because if he tries to talk to that woman, it could lead to her winding up going out here and using the criminal justice system like a weapon, or going out here and using the human resources department like a weapon. So it's gotten to the point where no man can even go out here and say good morning to a woman. And that's why so many guys are just silent these days, because something as simple as a cordial good morning can now be constituted as sexual harassment, because some paranoid feminist or some paranoid miseducated woman goes out here and wants to go out here and go after a guy, basically because he's just being cordial. And if you're a woman and you're out here, you have to speak out against these kind of things, because most men, they know, we all know the rules. And again, we know when a woman says no, that's it. We just charge her to the game and keep it moving. And we have a lot of females out here talking about how a lot of guys are thirsty. And Ringo talked about this in one of his live streams. And they'll say that you're a thirsty dude, but a lot of people don't understand what a thirsty dude is. Now, if you understand the whole concept of unwarranted and unwanted advances from sexual harassment, which is what I studied in human resource law, and you understand what a thirsty dude is. Now, a thirsty dude is a guy who goes out here and he'll ask a woman out, and he'll continue to ask the exact same woman out 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and he just really won't. He just keeps pushing, thinking that he's going to wear her down, like Steve Urkel used to say. And that's the kind of stuff that a thirsty dude does. He continues to ask the exact same woman multiple times, not understanding that that is the definition of insanity. And I talk about that in my book, Stop Simping. And you can check that book out in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com. But in that book, I talk about what a real thirsty dude is. Now, a thirsty dude is a dude who's got no control over his emotions. He just keeps doing, he's really socially awkward. He continues to, again, go after the exact same woman multiple times. And he doesn't understand what boundaries are. That's what a thirsty dude is. But you'll have the feminists and the Me Too women, they'll exaggerate this thirsty dude and make it like it's every guy, but it's not every guy. It's maybe 1 or 2 guys out here who are thirsty like that. And usually after a visit to the human resources department, and usually after a, talking to from some men in the community, usually your thirsty guy backs off. But many of these women, they go out here and turn the thirsty dude into this exaggerated caricature of a monster, and they project this one thirsty dude on all men out here. And again, it's just maybe 1 or 2 dudes like that, because most guys, if they approach, they will introduce themselves and they'll let themselves be known. And if the woman says, I have a boyfriend, or they're not interested, they'll just say thank you and then charge you to the game and be on about their business. But when you have people who really don't have good social skills like your feminists, they don't really understand about the rules of engagement. They don't understand how to really talk to a guy and set boundaries. And they take every approach as some sort of violent attack. And that's also something I talk about in the woman crisis that I'm working on right now, because a lot of these women who are feminists, they suffered abuse in their life. They've suffered sexual abuse, they've suffered physical abuse, and they really don't know how to deal with the whole idea of a man paying positive attention to them. Because they have suffered so much as related to negative experiences with men, they really don't know what it is when a man presents a positive approach to them. So they sit there and they will sit there and get upset. Oh, this guy is he's doing things to me. He's like, no, the guy is he's just doing the cold approach, which is what any guy does. And because you've never really had any really experience that was positive with a man, you never really had a father in your life, because a lot of these women are divorced, come from divorce, they come from single mother households. They don't know how to appreciate compliments or positive attention. So when a guy approaches them, everything is some sort of violence, but it's not some sort of violence. And again, if you're not interested, it's just easy for a woman to go out here and say, hey, I'm not interested in this dude. And, you just go on and be about your business. It's just very simple. A lot of women, they don't know how to reject a guy, so they want to go out here and they take things to extremes, like going out here and calling the police on a guy, or going out here and talking about everything is some sort of violence, and things like a male gaze, which is one of the craziest things I have ever heard. I mean, the whole male gaze concept, it just makes me shake my head, because that's part of a man's nature. I mean, guys look at women and guys notice women, and that's what women want men to know, because that's part of how they compete. I mean, part of how they compete is going out here and dressing up and looking fly and trying to get that man to notice them. But these other women, these feminists and these women who are a part of the Me Too movement, again, a lot of these women, some of them have suffered all sorts of abuse, so they don't want that kind of attention, and they don't know how to process that kind of attention because of the traumatic experiences they've had. So they don't really want anybody to approach any woman, because they don't want that attention. They can't get that attention for themselves, and they have not really worked out the issues in their life. But what's sad is, because these people haven't worked out the issues in their life, they go out here and are trying to create policy to keep other women from going out here and who have no issues from being able to have guys approach them. And guys, I'll say it again, they want to approach women. They want to go out here and step out. But what keeps them from stepping out and checking out the women these days is they don't want to go out here and have a police officer knocking on their door, or they're just walking down the street and a police officer just rolls up in a police car and says, hey, you did something to this woman and we have to take you in, just solely on her word. Because that's the scariest thing to happen to a guy out here. I mean, you're just like you're going to the post office, you're going to the store, and you just look a woman's way, and then 10, 20 minutes later, there's a police officer tapping you on the shoulder saying that you assaulted her, when all you did was just look the other way. And that's the legal precedent that is still out here, even though the Bill Cosby conviction was overturned. We still have this whole trust and believe that's really still a big part of many of the laws of our land. Even though the standard of law is no longer trust and believe, we still have to deal with the fallout of trust and believe. And as a result of this whole standard established by these older women, this is the main reason why so many men are avoiding contact with women, because this standard of trust and believe makes it where a man can just be, again, arrested just for just looking the wrong way, or saying the wrong thing, or just going about doing his business. And you have women sitting there wondering, like with the Pikachu face, oh, how did this happen? It's like, no, this is basic cause and effect. You followed a group of radical feminist cause, and the effect is men cannot go out here and engage women anymore. And they can't engage women because it's now basically a crime to do so. And these overlords want to go out here and control the dating market, and they want to eliminate competition. They don't want the female competition out there because they can't compete themselves. And because they can't compete themselves, what they do is they go out here and use the government and the police to squash the competition. And if you have laws on the books that prevent men from being able to engage women, those women can't get access to those men, and they can't get access to things like building a relationship and courting a woman, because that would, again, lead to them not being able to go out here and do what men and women naturally do, because men and women naturally want to go out here and engage each other. Men want to approach women, but the whole thing is, why would I approach you if I have to worry about the police? Why would I want to go out here and approach you if I have to worry about losing my job? I mean, these are critical questions many women really aren't thinking about. And T-Mac, I'll get to that in a minute, but a lot of guys, they don't understand. A lot of women don't understand these things. They just said, because a lot of women are, what they are is what people say, they're very submissive, and they go along to get along. The whole thing is, they don't understand that sometimes you go along and get along with the wrong people and the wrong policies. And that's what's happened here. You let the feminist speak for you, and you let her go out here and make all of these statements. And those statements have basically put a nail in your dating coffin and made it where guys they have to avoid you because they have too much to lose. So T-Mac, yeah, I did see that video about the black man who punched a Latino woman in Las Vegas, and that was really just par for the course there. That happens all the time in Vegas, and it's nothing new to me, because in Vegas, some of these chicks, that part of town is rough. So I've seen the video, but I haven't made any videos about it. I don't think I will make any videos about it because it's just par for the course. A lot of the feminists, they want stuff equal. Well, that's equal. And the whole thing is that I got to get back. I'm going to try to get back on subject, but you guys can donate to the Cash App, and that really helps with the channel and helps me be able to stay on the air. So I'm asking everybody to donate to the Cash App. Even $1 goes a long way, so that's greatly appreciated. John says he's a big fan, and so is his buddy Derek. His birthday is coming up, so happy birthday, Derek. I'm glad that you guys enjoy the channel, and I'm glad you're enjoying the content. But I look at the whole thing, like people are saying, oh, why don't men approach you? Well, this is why you have to come out and speak for yourself. You cannot sit here and let some radical feminist who has a whole bunch of daddy issues and emotional trauma come out here and speak for you. Because when this woman with daddy issues and emotional trauma and mental trauma goes out here and speaks for you, then she goes out here and pushes her agenda. And when she pushes her agenda, that agenda works against you. And that's something many American women don't really understand about movements like the feminist movement of the 60s and the Me Too movement of the 2010s, I would say. They don't understand that these kind of movements, they did damage to the American woman, and they put the American woman in really bad places. Because, for example, you had the feminist movement of the 60s, which had the woman going out here talking about how she wanted to gain equality with a man. And that is one of the things that led to the woman actually winding up being set back even further. So instead of her being a part of God's order, she became a part of the feminist chaos, because the whole feminist life is chaos because it's outside of God's order. And that's why you cannot sit there and remain silent and be complicit, because your silence is actually signifying compliance. And when you signify compliance, what happens is that it leads to you going along with something that winds up working to your detriment. And that's what happened to a lot of women with this Me Too movement, and following this feminist and doing things like allowing her to push these standards like trust and believe. What that did was make it where it was actually hurting your American woman, who was already on thin ice in the dating market. She was already having troubles because she could not find a man, and she couldn't find a man because she believed the feminist who told her, oh, there are no good men out here. We need to follow these whole Madison Avenue and Hollywood ideas of a good man, which were basically Pookies and Ray Rays repackaged. And that's what your Mr. Big on Sex and the City was, and that's what many of these other guys were. They were just repackaged bad guys, and many women left the quality men on the ground, and then went out here with these other guys who were exciting, the same kind of guys that during the days of courtship couldn't get to the door because the father was there to vet those guys. And once they saw the father there, your so-called bikers, your so-called mashers, because I've got all this stuff. It's going to be in the woman crisis. All these guys, the cads, the whoremongers, these guys couldn't get near your American woman until the feminist movement came along and told the woman she needed to go out here and pick her own man. But because she's emotional, she winds up picking the losers. And because there's no father there to put a boot in these guys' backside, what happens is these guys came to the forefront, and you had people not understanding what was happening was the bad guys were being pushed by the feminists, because the feminist likes the bad guys because that's all she can get. And she thinks all men are like these guys, but most men are not like those guys. And those guys who are decent brothers and decent men, they want to go out here and approach. They want to go out here and say hi. They want to go out here and say what's up. They know that women are throwing them nonverbal cues, and they want to go out here and step to these women and let them know that they received their signals, because guys, they know the nonverbal cues. They know the look. They know the smile. They know that this woman is throwing signals that they're interested, but they can't engage, because if they engage, they fear that there's going to be a 911 call made. They fear that if they do this on the job, they will be fired. And this is why guys aren't approaching. And you have women sitting there wondering, oh, why isn't he approaching? Well, you cannot go out here and tell a guy that he will be punished for approaching you. That's something that you can't tell a guy, because if you tell him that, then he's not going to approach, because he realizes that if he approaches, he's got a lot to lose. So he's not going to approach because he's looking at his economic future, because men, the first things that they're thinking about is, when they're putting themselves first, is they're thinking about their health, their safety, their freedom, and their ability to make a living. And if you put those things in jeopardy, then they are willing to make a sacrifice, and they're willing to cut you out of their lives. And that's what's happened to most of your American females. They have been cut out of the lives of most American men, because most American men, they realize that they just cannot lose their job, because they need a way to make a living. They need that money in order to have a place to stay. They need that money in order to feed themselves. And they're not willing to go out here and risk everything just because they see a fly girl in some nice clothes because that's just too much to lose. I mean, the whole thing is that because everything is in such high jeopardy for the man, he just cannot go out here and step like he wants to. So a lot of the females out here, some of them get off on having that kind of power over a man, but more rational, critical thinking females, they understand that if I go out here and I mess this guy up, I'm going to mess up my chances to build something. I'm going to mess up my chances to go out here and have relationships. Because when you go out here and make these kind of allegations, you're going to wind up like the 70% of black women who are single. And that's one of the reasons why 70% of black women are single. And this is a book you definitely want to pick up. Because a lot of the women who follow the Me Too movement, they are on the same road as the 70% of black women who are single. And they follow the exact same, a lot of those black women follow the same approach that the feminists told them. And now they have them miserable in their company. And now what they want to do with movements like Me Too is make more women more miserable in their company, because these are the same women who cannot go out here and pick up the quality guys out here. They know that they cannot, even if they approach them, they would be turned off, because these women have poor social skills, poor communication skills, and a lot of them, even some of them have poor hygiene. They don't take care of themselves. So they're not in contention. They know that they can't compete. They know that they're out of their league. These are the types that go around with the bonnet on and talk about male gaze and talk about body shaming and stuff like that. And they use these type of statements because they are trying to be defensive about the fact that they are out of their league. They have nothing in common with a guy. They cannot engage him in a conversation. They cannot go out here and talk about things as related to values. They cannot talk about things as related to character, because a lot of them don't have any character, because a lot of the Me Too women, again, they had no moral position. A lot of them were trading their bodies, again, on the casting couch in Hollywood in some cases, and others were trading their body on the job and for labor. And a lot of them were out here, and they were out here putting themselves in the number 2 position, and they cannot compete with the woman who is out here working for the number 1 position of being a wife. And because they can't compete, what they do is try to sabotage other women, and they try to sabotage those women by doing things, again, like the Me Too movement, or they go out here and they create policies to drive a wedge between themselves and men. And all of these things are the things that keep guys out here from being able to engage, because a lot of guys are still trying to figure out where the line is. I mean, guys had figured out and worked stuff out in '92 with after Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas. A lot of guys figured out, hey, I used to go out here and date the girls at work, and it really wasn't that much of a problem. But after Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas, a lot of guys stopped dating in the workplace because they didn't want to lose their job. So they took things and said, okay, I'll date women who don't work at this company or company affiliates, or I'll date women who work at another company, and I'll date somebody who is even from another part of town. So they'll find other places to go to look for women. And that really hurt a lot of women who were looking for a husband at the job. And then after we had the whole thing with the street harassment, guys stopped cold approaching in the streets. And then after the Bill Cosby conviction, guys just cut off all contact altogether. And sadly, most American women didn't see the big picture as related to what was happening to them. They didn't see how the feminist was cutting them all out of the dating scene, and they didn't see how the feminist was working to eliminate them from the dating market. What they were doing was cutting them out of the dating marketplace. And they didn't see that what the feminist was doing to them, because they were so busy trying to go along, to get along. They couldn't see that what they were getting along with was somebody who is working to get you out of the dating market, because they don't want to compete with you. And this is something that many feminists, they don't want to compete with women, because they know that they can't compete with women, because they know that if you have regular attractive women out here, they will go out here and get the attention of those guys in a second, in 4 or 5 seconds, and within about 5 or 6 minutes, they're setting up talking about going to get coffee. And they know that in that league, they just cannot play. So they create more and more rules and try to restrict more and more behavior. And when you have the government going out here and creating policy to keep men from being able to engage, this is one of the things that leads to women sitting there wondering, well, where have all the good men gone? Why don't guys approach me? Well, I can't approach you because there are laws that prevent me from approaching, and there are laws that make it where a man can wind up getting locked up just for asking for a phone number, and a man can wind up getting fired just for saying good morning. So what has happened is many women are now realizing that there were consequences to their actions. There was cause. Following this cause led to the effect of men cutting them out of their lives. And now many of them are realizing they are on the feminist road, where they are miserable in the company of many of these feminist women. I'm going to take a minute because, yeah, I heard about Biz Markie passing away, and he was in hospice care for about a couple of weeks right now, and they announced it, I think, last week that he had passed away, but then they said it didn't happen. And I'm sorry to hear about the passing of rapper Biz Markie. I hope to have a video up about him, because he was a major part of me growing up. I mean, his songs like Me and the Biz and Just a Friend, all of those songs, they were, I used to listen to those in high school, and he had a major impact on comedy rap. I mean, he basically was one of the pioneers of comedy rap with Kid and Play and all these. I mean, those are the guys who did the comedy rap, and that's back when rap was really diverse. So I am sad to hear about Biz Markie passing, and I'm sorry to hear that he is no longer with us. I mean, he had a major contribution in the rap game, and he will, again, be greatly missed. And I'm sorry, again. Kenyon asks a good question. Why are women too afraid to call out women on their own gender? Well, a lot of women are scared to call out other women because they're afraid of alienating other women. They're afraid that other women will do them dirty. And a lot of women, they're afraid that they're going to have to deal with the social consequences of when a woman calls out another woman. And that's why we don't see women doing this, but women have to go out here and start doing this, because when you have a feminist, she will undermine other women because, yes, she is female, but her frame of thinking is completely different than a woman. And this is something I talk about in depth in The Woman Crisis. Your feminist has a completely different frame of thinking, and your feminist, she basically covets the power of a man, and she wants to be in the man's position. So she wants to be in the driver's seat, unfortunately, because she does not understand God's natural order. What happens is that she winds up driving the car off the road because she is just a chaotic person. And she's a chaotic person because she comes from an environment where she had no father in her life, and she had no man to teach her about a model of womanhood, because men also teach their daughters, and that's also part of a woman growing up. And this is something that a lot of feminists don't understand, is that you do need a man in a woman's life, because that's the first man a woman ever experiences. And the first man is the one who teaches her how a man is supposed to treat her. The first man is the one who gives her that masculine energy that allows her to be loved. And that first man nurtures her and shows her that she can be loved and that other men will love her. Now, your feminist, because she comes from a single parent household or has a father who is somebody who goes out here and violates that trust by molesting her or goes out here and just abuses her, she doesn't understand these kind of things, and she projects all of her pain onto other people, and then she tries to create policy as related to her pain. And this is one of the things that winds up creating a wall between men and women. And this is one of the reasons why we have the rules all messed up like they are right now, because she has come in, first she came in talking about a woman could choose her own man, and a lot of women chose Pookies and Ray Rays. And then she wanted to come in after everything got messed up there, and then started driving more wedges, talking about this guy is doing this guy is doing that. Then the Me Too movement came along, and it just made it where everybody is living like she does, and the way she's living is dysfunctional. So she's sitting here bringing her dysfunction and thinking it's the norm, but no, it had to do with the dysfunctional upbringing she had growing up as a girl, and she grew up messed up. What's going on, Moshe? Glad to see you here. Glad to see you here, King. I'm glad that you're checking out my first show. But these feminists, the ideology, this culture, it really messes with a woman's mind, and she doesn't really. And a lot of women, they're starting to see that this is really messing up stuff for them, because a lot of them were able to go out here and date guys. A lot of them were able to go out here and have relationships. And it's hard to have a relationship when you're going out here. And what's up, Frank? I'm glad to see you here. It messes up the game for everybody. And that's what goes on with why you're not getting approached. And again, when I know that when I'm looking at things, women have to go and speak for themselves, because if the longer you let somebody speak for you, then you're not going to be able to go out here and be able to do the things you want to do, because your silence is seen as compliance. And if you comply with the feminist, she will have you miserable in her company. Now, I'm going to get ready to wrap up tonight's stream. So let's see about the likes. Let's see where we are right now. You got 58 likes, got 63 watching. Let's get the likes up. So let's get the likes up. And yeah, feminists also hate the Bible. I know that. I know that they hate God, Moshe. They truly do hate God. So if you guys could go pick up why 70% of black women are single, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you could donate to the Cash App, it would also be greatly appreciated, because that helps me stay on the air. That helps me be able to make more videos. And I'll answer Kanyan's question. Why can't women approach guys, since we're here on the feminism topic? Well, women do approach guys out here if they have strong masculine energy and they have strong presence, because I would get approached all the time. But a lot of women don't want to approach guys because there are old written social rules. And again, women want to see that leadership. They want to see that confidence, because they want to see if this man can lead them. If he will go out here and seek them out, it shows them that you're going to be possibly the kind of man who will be a strong head of household. So this is something women want men to do, but a lot of guys, their hands are tied by the laws of the land. And the whole thing is, women do approach guys if they feel his energy and they feel his vibe. They will approach because they see something in a guy. And again, it's very rare that it's done. I mean, I've had it done several times, but it's a very rare thing. And again, it's about the man's presence. But most women want that man to step up, because that's the first sign that he's a leader. That's what they want to see. in a guy is that leadership role. They want to see him taking that role as God's head, as God's steward. They want to see him in having that confidence, and that's why they want him to approach. That's the main reason why. And they don't want to see no guy coming up soft and coming up weak. They want to see a guy out here being strong. They want to see a guy coming out here and just having that energy. And that's what they're looking for, but they're not really looking for that whole soft male who's just weak body language, no head, his head is down like this, and he's like, hey, baby, you know what? They don't want to see that soft guy. They want to see the cool guy. And yeah, they will, like D-Wood is saying, yeah, they'll give you the signs that let them know that you're interested, and then the guy will come up and introduce himself. So that's what women want, but but the whole thing is, in order to get to that, they want to go out here and see, that, but the whole thing is they have to push back against this feminist, because this feminist is not interested in seeing healthy male-female relationships, because she comes from an extremely dysfunctional female relationship. And that's something I'm writing about in my new book, The Woman Crisis. And it's something that I put in my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. So you can get that book on Kindle and in paperback. You can also get it on Smashwords, the iBook store, and Google Play. And it's a book that will really show you why a lot of women are single today. And I'm hoping to get The Woman Crisis out in 2022. I also have a brand new book on pre-order that will help a lot of guys who are dealing with simping in cyberspace, because a lot of simps out here online, and that's Stop Simping in Cyberspace. And this is a book that's on pre-order. It's going to be out this October. I got to get back to editing it once I get off this stream. And I'm asking everybody to put in their pre-orders. I got about 4 pre-orders now. Let's try to get it to 10. So I want to ask everybody again, go put in your pre-orders for Stop Simping in Cyberspace. It's a great book, and it'll be coming this October. So I'm going to get ready to wrap up tonight's stream so I can go and finish editing Stop Simping in Cyberspace and continue work on The Woman Crisis. I want to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's stream, and I hope you'll be there for next week's stream.